And now we have Matt Vickers in the studio. You've had your slap as we put on the face.
It was worth the wait. Look at me, I like $1,000.
Of course, you're HD ready, Matt. Matt Vickers is, of course, the Shadow Immigration, Crime Policing and Fire Minister, Conservative MP for Stockton West. We've just heard quite a lot of frustration there from Trevor and indeed our other caller who we had on a second ago who was chatting to us. Sorry, I just forget his name. I do apologise. Andrew, of course, in Halifax. Apologies. And there's a real frustration about migration in this country. We now have the numbers, the shocking numbers, that 25,000 people, I should say, this year have come despite Labour's crackdown promise. They would say it's a legacy of your government. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say, do you know what? Before the election, things were definitely not going well on immigration, but we were making progress. We had a deterrent in place. The number of people who were in hotels was going down. The number of people who were being removed, who had arrived illegally, was going up. We were making progress, but actually since that election, the problem is because it's bad. People then go, well, it's bad and it's continued to be bad. No, it is so much worse. Since the general election, the number of people that arrived in this country has gone up, not a bit, it's gone up by 51%. It's off the charts. The number of people in hotels hasn't continued to go down, it's gone up. 28% more people in hotels across the country. And the number of people who are arriving illegally and being removed has actually gone down. All of the lights are flashing red on that dashboard. It's an utter disaster. But why is that? Well, he's going to smash the gangs. All he's doing is smashing records. The reality is he's put out the red carpet. He's told, he has changed the law. The government's changed the law to say if you arrive here illegally, you can become a British citizen. That was written into legislation.
But Matt, you can criticise the Labour record in the last year. You had 14 years. You were told in 2010, you were told in 2015, 2016 in the Brexit referendum, 2017 in the election, 2019 in the election. You were told time and time again, sort immigration. The Conservatives just didn't sort it, did they?
Well, I don't know that I was told, but the governments were told.
Yes,
but actually, when you look at it, Kemi, new leader, wasn't the leader. I wasn't a minister in the last government. It is entirely unacceptable, the situation that we were in before the election.
Many of the current cabinet, including James Cleverly, who's just gone back into the shadow cabinet, was the Home Secretary. They failed to get a grip here.
It was entirely unacceptable where we were. It is even more unacceptable that numbers are up 51%.
But are you in a position to criticise? Are you in a position to criticise here?
The reality is that these people who arrive illegally need to be removed. There was a deterrent put in place. It was in legislation that if you arrived in this country illegally, you would be detained and removed. We saw the ramblings. We saw people. I mean, the reality with Keir Starmer is that this is a guy who voted against every single measure brought forward to toughen up our immigration system. He then he actively campaigned against the deportation of foreign criminals. Are we really surprised that he's in charge of the country and things have gone from bad to much, much, much worse? Numbers aren't up a little bit. They're smashing records. 51% increase.
Speaking of smashing records, there were probably a record number of people on the streets of Waterlooville in Hampshire last night. This is thousands of people packing streets in protest after the Home Office secretly plotted to move asylum seekers into £250,000 flats. What we're seeing from the Labour government at the moment is that they want to get people, they're saying they want people out of hotels by 2029, but the alternative to that is putting them often into houses of multiple occupancy, social housing in other ways as well. When you see those people on the streets in Waterlooville, when you see people who aren't listening to the Labour government, they're not listening to you either, they're not even listening perhaps to Reform UK or other parties as well, they feel the political process hasn't and isn't working for them. They're out on the streets because they've nowhere else to go. What do you see when you see that?
I utterly share the frustration. These people, they're frustrated, they're fearful of what's happening to their community.
Isn't that a failure of the political process, man?
Well, it is, yeah. It is an utter failure that we've got immigration at the levels we have. Utter failure. The reality is those people are right to protest because the impact on their communities is horrendous. I went to Altrincham, which is now a bit historic actually, but hotel rooms, 300 hotel rooms taken out of circulation. The first thing you think is, what about all these lone men hanging around town centres? What does that say to people who want to go to the town centre? Then you see some of the horrific incidents that have taken place that will now be going through the courts about what some of these people have done. But actually the economic impact, that hotel went out of business. I met other businesses in the high street who were reliant upon the visitors who stayed in that hotel. The shops, the pubs, the restaurants, all being pushed. People who've worked hard to set up businesses pushed out by this. So those people are right to be out there protesting. The problem is the fringes who turn up and commit illegal acts as part of it. Often they're not even the local people. Often it's people who are busting from elsewhere who come in for a good riot and a good punch-up and to create utter havoc.
But of course that didn't happen last night. There was totally peaceful.
We've got to back the police in in being tough on those things, but actually we've got to legitimately allow people to go out and protest against this situation. It is entirely unacceptable.
But is Westminster listening to them? Is Westminster actually listening and getting it and understanding that this needs to be sorted out?
There are a good number of people in Westminster who get it, but clearly not the majority. We saw in Parliament, we had a vote on the Nationality and Border Security Bill that Labour brought forward. As part of that, we put forward an amendment that said if you come to this country and you commit a crime, you should go. At the moment, you've got to commit a crime and get a penalty. Well, you've got to be put away for 12 months in order to be deported. No, if you come here, if you break into the country, that is illegal. You should be removed. If you commit any sort of crime, you should be removed. And then we see the big frustration around the Human Rights Act and all of the saga. Chicken Nugget Gate, the guy who couldn't be shipped out because he didn't think he'd be able to shave at home, thought he'd face hostility back home. We've got these bizarre judgments. That is not what lawmakers want. That is judges taking some sort of artistic licence to do what they want. We had a vote in there to disapply the Human Rights Act from all deportation and immigration cases. And there were MPs in there who went through the other law, who voted against that. They didn't think that Parliament should be in charge of deciding who doesn't get to stay when it comes to.
But you're not in favour of withdrawing from the entire European Convention.
Well, we've got a piece of work going on. That Chemist Commission has put together.
Well, it's a year on. You still haven't made up your mind.
It's going to happen probably in September time. You're going to find it. But it's not about just saying it's all well and good. I can sit here and tweet anything. You can tweet anything. We can say whatever we want on the television. You actually have to have a plan about how you would do it and what all of the consequences are. We're going to bring it forward in a proper, measured way. Not just a reaction of saying it, but the reality is all of these cases are cases. By and large, Chicken Nugget get all caught up in the domestic courts. Disapplying the Human Rights Act sorts that. You don't even have to get into the ECHR debate. Do it tomorrow. It could have been voted on. It could be happening now. Those people could be getting deported.
You talked about support for the police there earlier. Robert Jenrick, your colleague, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has asked which side Labour is on in regard to the Manchester airport thug who attacked female police officers. He's been found guilty. We'll be careful, of course, because we don't want to prejudice a possible retrial of his brother. But Robert Jenrick has said the police need to know we've got their backs when they tackle violent offenders. Is that a reasonable criticism of Yvette Cooper? Why do you think she hasn't got the police's back?
I think it is a reasonable criticism. The problem for the police is they go in, they put their lives on the line to stand up for law and order in this country, and all too often the media's got it in for them, social media's got it in for them. Oh, the police did this wrong and the police did that. Everybody whips out a phone and tackles these guys and picks them apart. And the Home Secretary should have had their back. The first reaction should be, the assumption would be that the police are doing what they're trained to do. When they do what they're trained to do, then we should be on their side. When they're reasonable and proportionate in what they're doing. But the reality is, they're not on the side of law and order. Labour have taken off. We saw the workforce figures come out the other day. There are 1,316 less police on the streets now than there was when the election came. There is less funding available to police to do their job, to have the kit that they need to protect themselves and to protect the public. Horrendous situation.
Yvette Cooper says that she has always offered strong support to police officers who face appalling situations every day. In an interview earlier this month, she told our colleagues at Times Radio, "I've always and continuously offered strong support to police officers who face appalling situations every day of the week. I've spoken with Greater Manchester Police about this incident to ensure the officers get the support they need because it's important that they do so." I mean, what's wrong with that? Why is she not supporting the police in
the instant reaction was to question. The instant reaction of several Labour politicians was to question this police officer and their integrity over what had gone on through snapshots on social. It shows you a bit of the horrors of social media as well, in that other people joined that bandwagon because they saw a snippet, a small clip that didn't show you the context of a lady police officer having her nose broken, being battered and assaulted by these thugs. The reality is Labour are not on the side of law and order. They're not on the side of the police. They're putting less police on the streets. They're giving them less funding and resource, and they're letting criminals out of prison early.
Sir Gavin Williamson, your colleague, it's just been announced by Restore Britain that Sir Gavin Williamson, former Conservative Cabinet Minister, of course, former Defence Secretary, is joining the advisory board of Restore Britain to work with Rupert Lowe in Parliament. It's not a defection as such, but is this just a sign that grandees like Sir Gavin have actually got other things to do other than worry about Kemi Badenoch being Prime Minister, which isn't going to happen? Gavin
is a Conservative and will remain a Conservative for a very long time, a very committed Conservative who's having his part.
He's not that committed if he's working for Restore Britain.
Well, we engage in conversations with all sorts of people.
He's on the advisory board. He's on the
I engage in conversations with Labour politicians about what should be happening next and what shouldn't be. The reality
You're
is
not on their
Gavin's
advisory
committed.
board, though, or maybe you are. Maybe you'd like to tell me you're on
Gavin's
Labour's
committed.
advisory board.
Gavin is committed to getting a Conservative government back in this country so we can
Why
get
is he
those
working
police on
with
the
Rupert
streets and
Lowe,
sort
then?
out the issues with tax. We all engage with party politicians.
He's on their
from
advisory
different
board.
parties.
Well, I don't think it's a ringing endorsement of Kemi Badenoch. We'll agree to disagree on that. I wonder if we could talk about two more things before you go. One is this story on the front of the Times today about this vow on recognising a Palestinian state, possibly breaking international law. What do you make of these peers, lawyers, most of them, who have put this forward?
Well, I think the idea of recognising Palestine actually is just political posturing. It's flag waving. The reality is, the horrific scenes that we see in Gaza are not going to be, that humanitarian crisis is not going to be solved by recognising Palestine as a state. It's not going to bring those hostages back home who are still being held.
Isn't it a way Keir
later.
Starmer would argue to put pressure on Israel because of the humanitarian crisis?
No, it's not going to solve the humanitarian crisis. It's not going to get more aid into Gaza. It's not going to bring the hostages back. It's just political posturing. Him waving flags to his backbenchers, submitting to some political movement. The reality is that it won't change anything. In fact, when you look at Gaza and you look at the situation of a terrorist organisation, the answer to this problem is the removal of Hamas. There is no future peace.
Well, that's what Keir Starmer says he wants. He says he doesn't want them to be.
This is not going to help that in any way, shape or form. Recognising,
Is there a time when a Palestinian state could be recognised?
We want to see a two-state solution. We want to see peace in the Middle East. We want to see those hostages returned. We want to see Hamas removed from Gaza. We want to see the Gazan people not suffering in the way that we're seeing on television screens and newspapers across the country at the moment.
Let me ask you about Lord Tebbit, Norman Tebbit. His funeral was this afternoon. I think you were there.
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yeah.
So that is obviously. He was a towering figure in Conservative politics. Many people think if his wife had not been so severely injured by IRA terrorists in the Brighton bomb in 1984, that he might have been a successor to Margaret Thatcher. But of course, rightly, she was his priority. I wonder what your reflections on him having attended the funeral today are.
I think he was a titan of his time, an incredible guy who played a huge part, not only in a political party, but actually in the country. And all of the things that we talk about Margaret Thatcher having delivered, he had a central role. Behind every great man there's a great woman, vice versa. Well, I'm sure that he did have a huge role in delivering everything that Margaret Thatcher brought to the country.
Yeah, party chairman, employment secretary. Yeah.
Incredible guy, and actually spoke a lot of common sense in his time, was outspoken, the sort of common sense that we'd like to see spoken more in Parliament.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Matt Vickers there, Shadow Home Office Minister and Conservative MP for Stockton West. Thanks for joining us in the studio this Thursday afternoon. What is your reaction to what Matt said? Are you persuaded by what he says, or do you think there's more to argue against?